Hello and welcome back to the channel, everyone! Today is a truly beautiful day to sit down and talk about some of the most groundbreaking, heart-stopping daytime television we have been blessed with in a very long time. If you are as deeply invested in the current happenings in Port Charles as we are, you know that the latest episodes have been nothing short of cinematic masterpieces. Let's dive straight into the drama that has us all on the edge of our seats. I am absolutely floored by the sheer cinematic brilliance of what we just witnessed on that dark, isolated road with Carly and Valentin. I feel so incredibly moved by the way this fiery car crash was staged, because to me, it finally proved that the show is willing to push these characters to their absolute emotional and physical limits. When Carly and Valentin first arrive at the scene of the wreckage, the visual alone is staggering. The twisted metal, the horrific orange glow of the flames licking at the dark sky, and the eerie, terrifying silence before the chaos truly registers, it is a masterclass in atmospheric directing. I love the way the lighting cast long, ominous shadows over Valentin's face the moment he stepped out of the car. The way I interpret it, those shadows were a visual representation of the dark, impossible choices he was about to face. I feel like this is the best they've written Valentin Cassadine in years, because they have finally stripped away all of his sophisticated, calculating armor and reduced him to his most primal state, a desperate father. When Valentin approaches the secondary wreckage and realizes that it is Charlotte lying unconscious in that mangled car alongside Danny Morgan, the micro-expressions on James Patrick Stewart's face are nothing short of award-worthy. I think the writers did a phenomenal job of highlighting his internal dilemma in that split second. He is a WSB fugitive. He is looking at a lifetime behind the cold, unforgiving bars of Steinmauer prison if he is caught. I believe that having him pause, just for a fraction of a moment, to weigh the reality of his freedom against the life of his child, is what makes this show so profoundly compelling. He faces a truly grim choice: step into the light to save his daughter and lose his life to the prison system, or hide in the shadows and watch his entire world burn. And of course, because he is Valentin, he chooses the fire. He always chooses Charlotte. While Valentin is paralyzed by the sight of his daughter, we have Carly springing into action, and I feel so incredibly validated by Carly's choices in this episode. I know a lot of people might argue that Carly should have immediately run to help Valentin with the kids, but I actually think her decision to try and pull Jordan and Curtis out of their burning vehicle is the ultimate testament to who she is at her core. The way I see it, Carly is a pragmatist in a crisis. She sees two adults trapped in a fiery inferno, and she throws her entire body into trying to save them, even knowing her strength is limited against the crushed doors and the intense heat. I loved the specific camera focus on Carly's desperate, soot-stained hands as she yanked at the wreckage. I feel like this proves that beneath all of her scheming and her vengeful alliances, Carly possesses a fierce, almost reckless heroism. She is trying to balance the scales of the universe in a moment of pure, unadulterated chaos, fighting a losing battle against the twisted steel to save Curtis and Jordan. But the true emotional epicenter of this episode, and the moment that I believe will go down in the show's history as one of its most devastating turning points, is Valentin's plunge into the flames. I feel so completely shattered by the outcome of his heroic attempt. Despite risking his freedom, despite throwing himself into the literal fire, Valentin cannot save her. Charlotte dies in the crash. Now, I need to address the heartbreak that has the entire fandom in an absolute uproar right now. I know a lot of people are furious that the writers killed off Charlotte, calling it unnecessary trauma, but I actually think this is a stroke of tragic genius. I genuinely think we're missing the point if we just view this death as mere shock value. The way I interpret this devastating loss is that Charlotte was the very last tether Valentin had to his own humanity. Her death in that horrific fiery wreckage isn't just a tragedy for the canvas, it is the absolute destruction of Valentin's soul. I believe that the specific choice to have Valentin fail, to have him be right there, risking everything, and still be unable to pull her from the jaws of death, is what makes this storyline so incredibly powerful. When he realizes that she is gone, the sheer, visceral agony radiating from him is palpable. I loved the way the ambient sound of the crackling fire seemed to dull in that moment, focusing entirely on the raw, unspoken devastation in Valentin's eyes. I feel like this propels his character into a completely new, untethered, and dangerous era. A Valentin Cassadine with nothing left to lose and no child to protect is a terrifying prospect, and I am entirely here for the dark narrative places this will take us. And just when I thought the scene couldn't possibly pack more tension, the writers gave us a complication that I think is going to drive the plot for the entire next year. Just as Valentin is breaking down in the smoke and the despair, Curtis Ashford briefly regains consciousness in his own wrecked vehicle. I feel like this is the most brilliant, tension-filled twist they could have possibly executed. Right before passing out again, Curtis manages to open his eyes just enough to see Valentin's face through the smoke. I think Curtis is the absolute perfect person to have witnessed this. He is a former cop, a man with a deeply ingrained moral compass, and someone who will not let a detail like a wanted fugitive at the scene of a fatal crash go uninvestigated. The way I see it, that brief, hazy eye contact between a half-conscious Curtis and a completely broken Valentin is a masterstroke of suspense. I loved the specific staging of that moment, the flames roaring, the oppressive heat, and Curtis's eyes locking onto Valentin's face just long enough to register the impossibility of what he is seeing. In my opinion, this creates a wildly dangerous witness for Valentin and Carly's future. It turns a tragic accident into a ticking time bomb of a mystery. When Curtis eventually wakes up in the hospital, that memory is going to haunt him, and I feel like the impending cat-and-mouse game between Curtis's investigation and Carly's cover-up is going to be legendary television. This brings me to the absolute climax of the scene, which I believe is Carly's finest, yet most controversial hour. The sound of the police sirens begins to wail in the distance, acting as a terrifying, unavoidable ticking clock. Carly, realizing that the authorities are seconds away, makes the impossible choice to drag a devastated, broken Valentin away from the scene. I know a lot of fans are calling Carly heartless for forcing Valentin to leave his daughter's body behind in the wreckage, but I actually think this is the ultimate act of loyalty and pragmatic love. I feel like Carly is the only person strong enough to play the absolute villain in this specific scenario to save his life. I think we have to look at Carly's actions here as an act of saving Valentin from a fate worse than death. If the police arrive and find him weeping over Charlotte, he will be immediately shackled, hauled off to Steinmauer, and locked in a cage where he cannot even mourn her properly, let alone seek answers or revenge. Carly gripping his arm, using every ounce of her limited strength to pull him back into the shadows as the sirens grow louder, it was completely visceral. The way I interpret it, Carly took the burden of that horrific decision onto her own shoulders so that Valentin wouldn't have to. I loved the way Laura Wright played the sheer panic and determination in Carly's eyes. She wasn't being cold. She was being the ruthless protector that Valentin needed in that exact second. I feel so incredibly tense just thinking about the vast, sprawling ramifications of this single night. Carly and Valentin's vengeful, sizzling alliance has just been forged in literal fire and blood. They now share a secret so dark, so traumatic, and so legally perilous that it binds them together in a way no standard romantic relationship ever could. I believe this shared trauma is going to change the fundamental DNA of their dynamic. How do you look at someone the same way after they literally dragged you away from the fiery grave of your child? I think the writers are setting up a psychological deep dive for these two that will be completely fascinating to watch unfold. Furthermore, I believe this sets up the impending confrontation with Jack Brennan perfectly. Brennan is already on the verge of discovering Carly's secrets regarding her alliance with Valentin. But now, the stakes are astronomical. It's no longer just about harboring a fugitive, it's about fleeing the scene of a fatal accident, leaving behind victims, and covering up the presence of a wanted man at the site of his own daughter's death. I think the writers are building a pressure cooker situation here. When Brennan finds out the lengths Carly went to, the immense legal and moral risks she took to protect Valentin tonight, I feel like his reaction is going to be explosive. The way I see it, Brennan's impending fury is going to force Carly to defend her actions, not just to him, but to herself. And we cannot forget the absolute heartbreak waiting at General Hospital. I feel so completely shattered thinking about Lulu Spencer right now. We know from the timeline that Lulu is currently taking Rocco to the ER because of his infected hand, courtesy of Isaiah Gannon's secret house call. I think the tragic irony of Lulu being at the hospital, worried about a simple infection, only to be present when the victims of this massive car crash are wheeled in, is devastating storytelling. I believe the moment Lulu realizes that her daughter Charlotte was in that crash and that she didn't survive is going to be one of the most gut-wrenching scenes in the show's history. The way I interpret this setup, the writers are deliberately placing Lulu in the epicenter of the medical drama so that the emotional impact of Charlotte's death hits with maximum, devastating force. I also think we need to talk about Danny Morgan's role in this. Danny was in the car with Charlotte. He wanted to speed, he was reckless, and now this horrific tragedy has occurred. I feel like Danny is going to carry an insurmountable amount of survivor's guilt. The way I see it, this is going to heavily impact his relationship with Sonny and Rick, who had just warned him off the WSB and treated him like a kid. Now, Danny has been thrust into the most adult, traumatic situation imaginable. I love the detail that Danny was the one who likely made the disturbing phone call to Carly. I think having a terrified teenager be the catalyst for Carly and Valentin racing to the scene adds such a raw, human element to the overarching suspense. And what about Jordan and Curtis? I feel like the contrast between their sweet, romantic date night and this fiery hellscape is incredibly poignant. Jordan took her eyes off the road for just a second to give Curtis a kiss, and it resulted in this absolute nightmare. I believe the guilt Jordan is going to feel, assuming she survives the injuries from the wreckage, will be a massive storyline for her. I think the writers chose to have Jordan be the driver specifically to test her typically unshakable resolve. She swerved to avoid the oncoming car, and the consequences are fatal. The way I interpret it, this crash is going to completely upend the Ashford family dynamic, especially with Stella, Portia, and Trina currently so focused on the innocent, joyful task of decorating a nursery. The juxtaposition of new life and sudden death is a classic daytime trope, but I feel like it is being executed flawlessly here. In my opinion, this episode is a masterpiece of high-stakes daytime drama. It delivered devastating loss, impossible moral choices, and character-defining actions that will ripple through the streets of Port Charles for years to come. I know it hurts to lose a character like Charlotte, and I know it is agonizing to watch Valentin break, but I feel like this is exactly why we watch this show. We watch to see these incredibly complex characters navigate the darkest moments of their lives and see who they become on the other side of the flame. I believe the writers have set the stage for an era of Port Charles that is darker, more dangerous, and more emotionally resonant than anything we have seen in the past decade. And I, for one, cannot wait to see how Carly, Valentin, and Curtis navigate the ashes of this tragic night.